Okay. He's not wrong. I do believe in this. By the way, Muhammad Hijab, I'm a big fan of you, and I'm Egyptian as well. And I love your videos and all of you guys, very eloquent speakers. Um, but the things I have the problem is that you said Allah, doesn't have parts, right?
Yeah.
Didn't there was a hadith that says that Allah made isn't like the mercy of Allah like His nature as well? Because it says the hadith that Allah made His mercy into like 100 parts or something.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
another hadith that says He created Adam in His image, that Allah has an image, and He has hands and legs and everything. I know we reject any anthropomorphic interpretation, but the Prophet said He has an image. You know what I mean?
Okay, let me explain. So, first of all, let's take. I'm assuming that you're an Athari, right? You're a Salafi, yeah. I'm assuming this, and so that's fine. Let's take Ibn Taymiyyah's what he said about this himself. Ibn Taymiyyah, he wrote a book called Sharh Aqidat al-Isfahaniyya, right? Aqidat al-Isfahaniyya was actually Ash'ari book, but he done a sharh of it, like an explanation of it. And in that book, basically, he talks about this argument. He talks about the contingency argument, and he actually agrees with it. He says that now this is the point where you have to be careful. The point of when you're saying that anything that is made out of parts is generated in death. It's called tarkeeb. It's called the argument from composition, or the argument from parts, or whatever you want to call it, right? And Ibn Taymiyyah said that you have to be very clear as to what you mean by parts, because there's a difference between a part and an attribute. And he said that you have to make that extremely clear, okay? So long as we can demarcate the differences between a part and an attribute, the problem should be completely gone. And by the way, As-Sanusi, who's an Ash'ari, also had an issue with this, because you had a group of people called the Mu'tazilis who basically negated all of the attributes of God. Practically all of them. And
sorry to interrupt, man, but I'll be honest with you, completely off topic, man. You said you had some beef with his contingency argument, and then you completely went somewhere else.
So just to summarize on this point, just quickly.
Go on.
So there's a difference between a part and an attribute, and just on that hadith, which خلق الله خلق آدم على صورته, yeah, Allah created Adam on His image. The vast majority of ulama say that this means that. So can you mute it? Let me know. Oh yeah, sorry. The vast majority of ulama say that on Adam's image. So على صورته أي على صورة آدم, on Adam's own image. This includes people of the Salaf like Ibn Khuzaymah, who died I think 270 something. I can't remember, but he believed in that. There were some people that said that this word surah, it means something we don't know, and they apply the same logic as they do with all the other attributes. Bila tamthil, there's no you don't do tamthil, tashbih, etc. But it's an attribute that we don't know how to make sense of. But basically, there's no one that would say that Allah is in the image of Adam as an anthropomorphic way. Yani that Allah is, that's a Christian belief actually. That Allah was created, the belief that human beings were created in the image of God. This is a Christian belief, and no Muslim would believe that the actual image of a human being represents the image of Allah, because of what Allah says in chapter 42, verse 11. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There is nothing like Him, and He's the all-seeing, all-hearing.
Yeah. Just to add something to your image, Flex. I heard something the other day about this, that when Allah says He created in His image, He's not talking about our shape or anything like that. He's talking about that we have His attributes.
Yeah, this is what Ibn Qayyim, I think Nawawi said that. There's actually two hadiths, right? There's one that says خلق الله آدم على صورته, number one, and the other one, which is da'if, actually, it's a weak hadith. This is actually a weak hadith. But there's another one which is in Musnad Imam Ahmad, which خلق الله آدم على سورة الرحمن, that Allah created Adam on the image of Ar-Rahman. And Imam Ahmad, he affirms this, I believe, as a legitimate hadith, which you can't say in that second one, على سورة الرحمن, or it goes back to Adam on his own image. You can say على سورة الرحمن, it has to be Ar-Rahman. But then again, Imam Ahmad and all of those Salaf never understood that as the actual image. There's nobody that understands it like that in the whole of Islam. In fact, only those people that believe in it are anthropomorphists, actually believe in that the image of the human being is the image of Allah. That is an incompatible belief with Islam.
Lamino, forgive me, but I've got to give the atheist a chance, yeah? All right? So thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you so much, Lamino.
You're welcome. Afwan. Spiritual atheist. You can unmute yourself now.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Yes.
Yes.
We can.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for me. The reason I reject that there is a creator God is the 4 points. First is the cause argument. The problem with the cause argument I see is that the cause, if you take any example from the universe, is in itself is not potent enough or independent enough. What do I mean by that? Let's say if I say I'm conscious cause of making coffee. Now, me without coffee beans, water, a pot, I in itself in that context is useless. So I don't think the cause argument you can extend back. So that's one. Number 2 point is when if you can comprehend, rationalize, or understand that there is an entity, let's not call anything, which can be eternal and which has so many attributes. If that entity can be God, there is no problem thinking that that entity can be universe. And the third point, the way I look at it is that let's say this entity. Now this entity has consciousness, and let's go back, let's say 10,000 billion trillion years back. Let's say there is just time in that case, and I take a snapshot of this entity. Why is that entity, we being conscious, not have made the decision to create the universe? Then I minus 1 hour, then you go on forever. Still, it is not created. So if it is conscious, that means there is a kind of a thinking or a ripple of thinking. So he's making that conscious decision not to create. But at a particular point in time, though his eternity backwards, so he's eternal from backwards, he's thinking no, no, no. And suddenly at a point in time, he thinks that he can create something that is, it does not fit the kind of attributes given to this entity, which has all these amazing qualities, being conscious, self-sufficient. Then he's been self-sufficient for trillions of years, or like eternity, trillions of years, like a flash of eye, just like that. So these 3 points, that's why I do not think there is a creator God. And the fourth is the kind of attributes given by all the religions, which say there is a God. With all those attributes like mercy and justice, those are straight away contradictions. So that even makes even more impossible to have a all-powerful entity who is knowing yet not interfering. You can say that then the theology will come in, the philosophy will come in according to each region. That's not the point. It means that a powerful entity is looking at something. He says he's powerful. He says he's all-knowing, and yet he's not interfering when there is an actual suffering in the universe. So this is a straightforward contradiction. So thanks.
Okay. Have you been watching the stream?
I'll join a little bit late on that one.
Too right, you did, mate. You joined about 10 minutes ago, I think. We've covered most of it, but anyway, I know the doctor's going to give you words of wisdom. He loves it when people give 0.12, 0.3, 0.4. I know it. I've seen it. Go on.
No, I just I'm quite surprised actually, because you've just laid out all of the classical sort of things that people say, and it's not really anything to do with specifically the argument that was given, and I was just listening to you thinking why you think these points are valid in any way, and I'm still waiting for the atheists to come on and talk about why the contingency argument doesn't make sense or anything. There's no one really has done, and even Muslims have come on and said that they want to talk about the contingency argument and haven't spoken about it. But you really gave, at the end, you gave the problem of evil. I think before that you asserted that mercy and justice are contradictory attitudes to have, assuming that actually they have to be applied 100 to their fullest capacity at every single moment, which is no one makes this claim. And in your first 2 points, I really didn't understand how you were explaining them. So I don't really see the arguments that you're making. If you want to give your first point, and let me see if actually this is something that we can maybe discuss. But I think it's not on the topic that we're specifically discussing. So what was your first point? Sorry. What was your first point? Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I will explain. So I went too fast. Yeah, no, with the cause argument, generally what I have seen from all the people who believe in God, they said there is a cause. Then they gave an event for an example, and they say this is the cause of that event. Now, if you look for that any example, like I given the making example of making coffee, if you look at that objectively and minutely in detail, you will see that the cause in itself at that particular, that's only the very first example fails. And why it fails is cause in itself is not independent. And because as I mentioned, without coffee, water, the cause in itself is not useful. So what do I mean by that? If you're gonna take an argument that because you have to get okay, this causes this causes, and you go back, and then you'll say that oh, there is an uncaused cause, but because the cause in itself is important, it doesn't have any power in itself to cause anything. For the reasons I have provided, the argument fails there.
Okay, just
So
let me
that
just
was my first point.
discuss that for a moment.
Do
So,
you have any counter on that?
well, I don't think you've made an argument. I'll explain why. So you're saying that causes are impotent, and obviously, if causes are impotent, then they can't actually have an effect.
I've muted him.
Yeah, that's fine. So you seem to be making the argument that causes
No,
are
in
somehow.
context. No. So, sorry to interrupt. I'm saying that
No, don't interrupt.
It's okay. Let him clarify. If he thinks I'm misunderstanding him, let him
All right,
clarify.
then. Go on then.
No. When I say I do not speak just like that. I'm saying in whatever I'm saying is in context of. So when I say the cause is important, I am saying that is in the context. It needs the coffee beans, water, a pot, and an energy source. So in that context, the cause itself is important. If something is true in microcosm or in if you go to the minute details, then it is true for the whole also. So you can give me an example and we can apply the same principle. So that is my only point. In context, the cause itself, forget about the entity outside God or anything like that. This particular example, when you say that, because you build an argument, not you, it's like I've seen in general that, oh, this has been caused by this. But if the cause itself has been shown to be not in itself complete and powerless, in the context that it needs other things to make an effect for the end result, which is coffee, then the whole argument fails. So that is my point.
I think you're misunderstanding the
It's in
argument.
context, not in
I
itself.
don't know what you're talking about.
Spiritual atheist.
Cause will be there.
Let me just clarify so I understand you. You seem to be saying because there are multiple things required to make coffee, then each of those things somehow are the causes in their own right are not sufficient. Now, the problem that you're having is that we're not talking about an isolated event. We're talking about all of the events that you can put them together. So if you start off with any point, the fact that I exist, there must be a reason that I exist, a cause for my existence, and then you can look at that in any way. So even if you want to look at down to the fundamental particles that bring me about, and then you want to eventually you'll get to the stage where you're talking about the universe in its entirety, and then you have to provide an example, a reason for the universe to be in existence. So what is the cause of that universe to exist? So the options that you're left with is either the universe was always there, okay, and then you'll have the problem of the infinite regress of causes going back in time, back infinitely in time, which is an absurdity. We've mentioned this before. Or the other option is actually no, that there isn't an infinite regress. Actually, there has to be a fundamental cause that causes everything else. Now, some you might be having the issue of time and eternality as being an issue. So the contingency argument, which is presented today, doesn't require those. It talks about the existence itself as being the thing that you're explaining. So something exists because of another thing, so it's dependent upon that thing. And you can take this back as a chain, but there cannot be an infinite regress of these dependent things going backwards. There needs to be something foundational that it has to build on. So, for example, if I have to have the ground for me to build anything in a house upon. I can't build a house in mid-air. So the foundation that you build everything else upon, i.e., everything that exists builds upon this foundation, is something itself that is not dependent on anything else. And for causality, is a similar argument. We can't have a infinite regress of causes. There has to be in the beginning an infinite an uncaused cause, i.e., a cause that in itself is not cause. Otherwise, you end up with absurdities. The argument you've made, to be honest with you, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because you seem to be arguing that the causes are impotent. So I don't understand your argument. It doesn't seem very valid to me. I don't know.
If you want to respond to that, Mr. Spiritual Atheist.
Am I understanding that right, Mohammed? Do you think that's what he's saying? Or?
No, I don't. Just to add to that, I don't see the validity of it at all. I think what he's trying to say, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, is that causes don't exist almost in and of themselves. So to postulate there's an infinite regress of such causes is meaningless because causes in themselves don't exist. I don't know if that's what he's saying, or if they're ineffective. But if they're ineffective, because a cause is defined in the dictionary as something which brings rise to phenomena. Right? That's how it's defined. If it's ineffective, then it's not a cause. Basically, if a cause cannot bring an effect or cannot bring rise to something else, then it basically doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So he's saying that to postulate an infinite regress of anything which doesn't exist is meaningless because the cause itself doesn't exist. But he hasn't demonstrated with his example, I think it was a poor example, why the cause doesn't exist. He's actually demonstrated a good reason for the cause to exist. If he said that, for example, in order for me to make a cup of coffee, I have to do 1, 2, and 3. Right? I have to put the.
You've turned upside down.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Someone was calling me. If you're saying that I have to do 1, 2, 3, which is I have to put the hot water and I have to put the coffee and I have to put the milk, and that if doing 2 of those 3 things is sufficient but not necessary, this is going into a logical aspect of sufficient but not necessary conditions, right? But there he hasn't really provided a reason why the cause doesn't exist in that sense. So he's given an example of why the cause would require many moving parts to come together in order to be, but he hasn't given an example why the cause doesn't exist.
Give him a chance. Come on, Spiritual Atheist. What's your response to that?
I never once mentioned that the cause itself doesn't exist. What I'm trying to say is that if you look at the cause, you said cause that makes you said I think he gave the definition that which causes effect. Yes, I'm right. You're correct. That is perfectly fine. But what I'm saying, that particular cause, I'm not saying when I say that it is in itself is not independent, that does not mean it doesn't exist. I am saying it exists, yes, but in itself, as example, you said coffee example doesn't make sense, but you can provide me any other example. So I will stick with the coffee example. What I'm not saying, I never use the word it does not exist.
Spiritual Atheist, stick to the universe. Stick to the universe example.
Oh, so okay, no, no, that's the whole reason, because what I think Imran did is that because I want to go into the nitty-gritty of one example to understand, because if that falls apart, the rest of it falls apart. And the reason I'm saying that is, he said that there's a house, there is a foundation. Okay, who created me? Who created me? And you would say that there's an infinite regress. That's the only problem. If you're looking that it is in like in a linear line, and when the time is going -1 second, -2 seconds, not like that. But that has not been demonstrated. The time itself can be cyclical in nature. So if you think of the world as a big giant washing machine, it's going round and round and round. At this point, you don't have to go like linear back. You're trying to shot an arrow backwards. Then the time comes into picture. Then we have to understand how time. What do you mean by time? you take time, like as they say that, like in general relativity with space-time for considering big objects. I don't care about that. I want to know at the particle level.
But why is the question is my question is, how does your example of the coffee demonstrate? Because what you said, the words that you used was that shows that the cause is impotent. But if the cause is impotent, when you say impotent, you mean it's inconsequential, it's ineffective. If it's ineffective, then so basically it's not doing its job. If it's not doing its job, my inference from that is that the cause is basically not a cause. So how could it be impotent and effective at the same time?
No. I'm not saying it is ineffective. Also, I'm like, I will repeat that when I say that it in itself is incomplete.
What's incomplete? What's incomplete?
I think he's lost sound. Have you lost sound, spiritual atheist?
Allahu Akbar.
Well, there was an effect there without a cause, I think.
There we go. I think as soon as I said something, he ran. No, I'm only joking. I don't know.
That didn't make any sense to me, because whether it's irrelevant if the universe is cyclical or not, because you're still having a chain of events in that cyclical universal system that you've set up. It doesn't change the discussion. So I don't understand why he was saying that, because he seemed to be arguing that there are no causes, which didn't really make sense.
Yeah, he said it wasn't. I don't think he's thought through this properly, but maybe we haven't understood him properly. That's also
that might be the case. Yeah,
we tried. This is Jack. I don't know whether he's going to comment. Hello, Jack. Because I've messaged him in the private chat and he's not said anything.
I think give him an opportunity, because this is the philosopher gentleman that.
This is the one who was with that other kid. Jack.
Just typed in the chat, Jack. You're on.
Yeah, Jack. He said he was a little bit of what was the word he used?
Boomer.
That was it. Baby boomer. Okay. Shall I let Muslims on now then? They can come and grill Muhammad Hijab.
So one of the common things that's just going through the post that I think a couple of atheists are posting this but not coming on is that no evidence has been presented. And so what they're referring to, this thing that I mentioned right at the beginning, is that some people don't regard argumentation or using logic or philosophy to establish points as evidence in itself. Why is that a problematic position for people to be in, or is it a problematic position for people to be in, that you can't use these things to establish any sort of evidence? And so what I'm assuming is that they're referring to empirical evidence or some sort of physical thing. Jack, you're on.
Jack, unmute yourself, mate.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you.
What do you want to say?
Well, I thought you guys wanted to talk about atheism or something.
Say again, sorry?
I thought you guys wanted to talk about atheism or something.
No. We're inviting atheists to come on to challenge our position. Don't say what's your position, please.
I'm an atheist.
No, I understand that. So, have you been watching the stream?
A little bit of it.
All right. Did you hear our position with regards to evidence for a necessary being?
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
So basically, the argument from contingency, the idea that you cannot have an infinite number of dependent things. There has to be an independent source. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
Yeah, so I take it that arguments from contingency presuppose a principle of sufficient reason.
Yep.
Is that right? So you guys presuppose the principle of sufficient reason?
In what sense? Can you clarify that?
Principle of sufficient reason is the idea that
I know the principle. I
every
meant, like, in
fact-
what sense is it applicable in this context?
I thought that's how you run an argument from contingency.
In what? Can
One
you
of the
explain
premises
why
of the
is
argument.
how is it presupposing that? In what?
Well, the
I might
idea
agree
is-
with you, but I just need you to elaborate a little bit more on what aspect of the argument requires the presupposition.
Well, the idea is that contingent facts, if they're not explained by a further contingent fact, require a necessary fact for their explanation, because there can't be brute contingent facts given the principle of sufficient reason.
Okay, but what's contingent facts got to do with the arguments of contingent? Because here the category that I'm talking about is not fact. It's not a factual category. It's a category of existence. So if you want to call it
Well,
this, the transcendental.
I thought the idea of a contingency argument was to reason from contingent facts, which, because of the principle of sufficient reason, require an explanation to a necessary fact.
Yeah.
So you guys
But
hold
in
to
terms of, like,
principle
okay,
of
so what's the principle of sufficient reason, right? What is required in order for there to be a sufficient explanation? Is that what you're trying to get at?
I'm just making sure that you guys hold to a principle of sufficient reason.
I hold to it. I have no problem in holding to not only the principle of sufficient and necessary reasoning, but to all of the logical principles.
So if you hold to the principle of sufficient reason, you understand that that commits you to necessitarianism, right?
Pardon?
You understand that holding to the principle of sufficient reason commits you to necessitarianism, right?
In what sense?
Do you know what necessitarianism is?
No. Go ahead, please. Tell me.
It's the view that there's only one possible world.
Why would that be a necessary corollary?
Well, the idea is that if there's a necessary fact, let's say God, which explains some contingent fact, like the universe, right?
Yeah.
The idea is that some feature of God's nature, right, must explain the contingent fact, in this case, the universe, right? Presumably something
I
like
think that, once again, there's a bit of cross-purpose talking here, because the category that I'm talking about is not fact, is existence. Do you see the point I'm making? If you wanted to,
the existence of the universe, right?
Pardon?
The existence of the universe, right?
No, so if we wanted to talk about this in terms of categories, right? Because what I don't want to happen is that there's a category mistake along the way. So I'm talking about in the category of existence. So if you want to call it a transcendental universal category, okay, the transcendental universal category that I'm outlining here is the category of existence. And so what I'm talking about when I talk about necessary existence is I'm talking about for every existence that exists, not fact here. I'm not talking about the category of facts. For every existence that exists, it can either be compartmentalized into one of three categories. Either impossible, it's like a set with no members, there's no such thing as a squared circle in reality, or contingent, or necessary. So what I'm basically saying is that there can't be an infinite regress of dependent or contingent things, because that would lead to an absurdity. Therefore, there is a requirement for a necessary existence. This is the language that I'm using.
Yeah, right. So my point was that a contingent,
Yeah,
right, that's explained by, well, my point is that a contingent fact that's explained by a necessary being, such as God, right, must be explained by some feature of God, right?
I
Such
think
as
once again
God's
you're not using the
desire
same
to
language
create
I'm
the
using.
universe.
I'm very careful with. I haven't used the word God, and I haven't used the word being. I personally haven't used those words, and I haven't used the word fact. So my articulation, I just said, and I would like you to pay attention and be fastidious to the wording here. I'm saying that in the category of existence, okay, there are three types of existence: impossible existences, which is like a set with no members. It's like a squared circle, doesn't exist. Then you have contingent things, which rely on other things in order to exist. And then you have necessary things, which don't rely on anything in order to exist. What I'm saying is that there cannot be an infinite regress of contingent existences. That leads to an absurdity. And the only way to stop that absurdity from transpiring
Okay, what's the
is to
absurdity
introduce the
there?
concept of a necessary existence.
Wait a minute. What's the absurdity there?
Pardon?
What's the absurdity there?
The absurdity is if we say that something which is dependent is defined as something which relies upon something else in order to exist, and then you say that there's only contingent things that exist, contingent existences are in existence, that means you have things which depend upon other things, which depend upon other things, which require things to depend upon ad infinitum, and that is impossible, because what is all of this supported by? What are your options?
I'm not really seeing the contradiction there.
Okay, so explain to me how contingent existences or contingent things which is by definition something which relies upon something else, can depend upon something else which relies upon something else, which depends upon something else which relies upon something else ad infinitum.
I'm just not seeing the contradiction.
You might not be able to see it, but you have to explain it if you think it's possible.
Well, if you're saying there's a contradiction there, you should be able to state the two propositions.
I said it's an absurdity. Once again, it's important to
by
listen very carefully
absurdity,
to the wording.
did you mean by absurdity, did you mean that it's contradictory?
No, so it's good that you asked me that question. What I meant is it's inconceivable.
What difference does that make?
No, a contradiction has very specific denotation.
No, what difference does it make that it's inconceivable?
It's a different wording, or you can check the two different words. But can you explain?
I'm just not understanding what the problem
a contradiction
is.
A contradiction is defined in a different
I'm not
way to something
understanding
inconceivable.
I'm not.
Do you know what is a contradiction? Something which, under all circumstances and all interpretations, cannot be coherent. Okay, I'm saying that it's inconceivable, which is slightly different. You cannot think of it as being consistent. It's inconsistent. It's basically not possible to be argued. It's impossibly argued. But I'm asking you, if you take the position that it is possible to have a world of only contingent things depending upon contingent things ad infinitum, can you provide us a mechanism for understanding how that can be? what that would look like.
Well, no, I mean, if you're saying it's impossible, I'm just trying to understand the argument for that.
So you don't understand the argument?
No, I didn't see any argument there. It just saw a claim.
Do you believe it
Okay,
can?
if you didn't see any argument there, let me try and help you out.
Let me just ask you just 1 second. Just try and bring it to my level. Do you believe that dependent things can go back ad infinitum?
I don't really see the problem with it.
Do you believe they do? It does.
I don't take a position on it.
You don't take a position?
No. I don't know whether it's
it can happen. So
Sorry?
So you believe it can happen, though? You can have an ad infinitum number of things.
I don't see any reason to think it can't happen. What's the argument that it can't happen?
The problem, okay, let me explain.
I'll give you my example. Sorry, I know you're going to give him words of wisdom. Let me just give my crazy speaker's corner Lex.
Yeah.
All right. I'll give you my sniper example. Yeah. So you've got a sniper who's about to take a shot. Yeah. Just agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But he can't take that shot until he gets permission from his superior officer.
Sorry, say that again.
He can't take the shot unless he gets permission.
Okay.
Yeah? But the officer can't give him permission until he gets permission. And his officer can't give him permission until he gets permission. Ad infinitum. Will the sniper ever take the shot?
Why wouldn't he?
Because he would never.
Come on, man.
Jack, it's been lovely having you on. We really appreciate the.
I was kind of excited.
We really appreciate the discussion.
I dumbed it down to layman speaker's corner, basic example. Someone can't take the shot, only get permission. It's ad infinitum, asking for permissions. Permissions never come back up the line. Shot will never get taken. That's it. Done.
Gosh,
I think what it is that when you don't have anything to say, you have to play dumb. That's what it is. Sorry to say, Ian.
Any other atheists in the chat, because the den is full. Right. Sorry, spiritual atheist. You're leaving the building. Forgive me. Right.
But he seemed like an intelligent guy, but he just seemed like he was disingenuous, to be honest.
Well, to be honest with you, he started off with a principle that I don't think we do agree with, because I didn't know what principle of sufficient reason was, and we kind of believe in it, but not fully. Because
it's a logical principle. It's one of the like 9 or 10 logical principles that you'll start with in propositional logic.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
principle of sufficient and necessary conditions.
No, but it says everything must have a reason, and once you allow that, then you're saying that the cause of everything must have a reason also. If you're applying that,
I don't think the entailment is that. It's not that everything must have a reason. It's just there's some conditions have sufficient reasons and some have necessary reasons.
Because I was just reading it just said.
But I don't see how that affects anything. Like, if so, for example, you need some things need necessary conditions. For me to be in my car, okay, it's necessary that I exist.
Agreed.
But it's not sufficient because I have to be situated in this car.
So you can exist and not be in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's necessary conditions, like things that you can't do without, and then sufficient. So that's what now the standard has been met. I don't see what that's got to do with, basically, what we're talking about at all.
I was just reading it on Wiki, to be honest, where it said the principle of sufficient reason states that everything must have a reason or a cause. And I would say everything that begins to exist has a reason or a cause. But I wouldn't. Do you get that?
I mean, I don't know why Wikipedia is not the best.
Probably.
I don't know why they defined it like that, but it's not everything must have. I mean, most people that make, for example, ontological arguments or contingency arguments use the idea of, okay, in order for this to be caused, there needs to be a sufficient button. They use this kind of language.
Okay.
In fact, Leibniz uses that language, sufficient and necessary condition, all the time, and I don't see how it connects to what he was trying to communicate. I don't see.
Okay.
Sufficient is like, okay, that all the conditions have been met for the thing to be. Necessary is that this needs to be met. So, for example, if I want to get into, someone wants to get into university, it's necessary that they're a student, but it's not sufficient. They need to get some certain grades.
That makes sense.
Like that's how I understand it.
All right, we've got another atheist here. Hopefully he's been paying attention. I can't believe the atheist is coming onto the stream and not knowing what's going on, not seeing anything.
Oh yeah,